and I don't have any credentials whatsoever as a gardener. I'm not a master gardener or anything like that. I do think that the garden I have is a credential. I think I'm one of those guys, if you drop me off on an island and gave me a pack of seeds and said, don't die, I think I could probably do it.
I would like to be on your island as well.
Exactly, yes. Listening to the Maritime Gardening Podcast, episode 94, brought to you by Vessi Seeds and Safer's Gardening Products. Well, folks, this is the last podcast I'm going to record for 2019. I'll be back in 2020, but usually around this time of year, end of November sort of thing, I wrap it up for the season, take a little hiatus, take a couple months off, and I usually come back around the end of February, early March sort of thing, and talk about where I'm going to put everything in my garden, do one of those sort of things. So for the end of 2019 season, I thought I'd do the same thing I did last year and bring back the beginning. Go back to the beginning. Bring back Dave Doggett, the mastermind that got this whole thing started. Dave, why don't you say hello?
Hey, Greg. Hey, everybody.
So, for those of you that don't know, the way this whole thing started, some of you might be watching because you watch my YouTube videos, but I didn't start off on YouTube at all. I started off doing audio podcasts, and that whole thing started because I emailed Dave, and there was a gardening blog called Maritime Gardening, I think, and that Dave had created. He had a series of blogs. He had Maritime Gardening, or Nova Scotia Gardening, or something like that. He had Nova Scotia Fishing, Nova Scotia Hunting. This was back in the early 2000s when message boards were the thing.
Yes.
And David made these really awesome, very successful message boards that at the sort of heyday of that. And if you were an angler or a hunter or an outdoors person in Nova Scotia and you want to know anything about anything, you went there and you put it up as a question and some guy would answer it. He sold those off and they become, they're still semi-useful, but there's a lot of trolls and flaming now. And I mean, that's just become the culture. I think the culture of online chat, sort of dynamics has changed. Initially it was much more innocent and so on, and now it seems like everywhere you go, there's some bully that just wants to sort of control the space. Not to say that there isn't good places to go, but anyway, getting off of the diatribe here. So I said to Dave, I emailed, said, what happened to that thing? Where is it? And he said, oh, I got out of that. I sold that thing. But I'm doing this podcast thing now. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And he said, oh, you've got an interesting voice. Maybe you want to do something. And I thought, well, maybe I'm being recruited to be a porn star. But I decided to. I decided to trust the guy, and because I sort of had a semi-relationship, because when I used to be a regular. I would read and contribute and post on the fishing one. I would see posts from Dave. He seemed like a normal sort of guy. Likes fishing. How bad could he be? Right?
Yeah.
So we recorded this. He came up with the idea of maritimegardening.com, the podcast, and we recorded our first episode. And we got Dave here with us today, and he's in his minivan. And my favorite episode is of all the podcasts I think I've ever recorded is the very first one that I recorded with Dave in the minivan, the very minivan. Is it the same one?
This would indeed be the same vehicle.
In that very minivan. So I met a guy in a parking lot to record this the first time.
This is getting worse.
Some guy, the Tim Hortons parking lot.
Yep.
So I met him in a parking lot, and we sat in his van in the parking lot and recorded the first episode of Maritime Gardening Podcast, and it's a great episode. And the audio is crystal clear.
It turned out very well.
So you might as well say, why is it that you like? Because you don't always record in your van, but you do sometimes. I remember we used to do a lot of the episodes when we record these. You'd be where you live in Bridgewater, and I live where I'm near Halifax. You'd be in your
right. Yeah, I other than the first episode when we met in person and recorded, I just I kept trying to find a location in my house and my office and it's just the audio wasn't great. And I'm like, I think I'm going to go sit in the van and try that, and it's perfect. I mean, I'm not using as high a quality of microphone at this given time, but the acoustics in a vehicle are generally pretty good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't live in my van, even though it's starting to look that way. But it's a great recording studio. So if anyone out there is listening, needs to record some audio, or, I mean, I've gone to my van just to do phone calls with certain clients because, well, I have a couple noisy kids as well in the house. So that plays into it. But anyway, here we are. I don't know how many years later.
When did we start? Was it 2015? I think it was.
I think so. So we're looking at 3-4 years.
This is I think this is the 4th year. I think it was 2015 was the worst garden I ever had.
Okay. That sticks out. Yeah.
Started being a gardening person.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can remember vividly when you called me for the first time before we even went on this venture. But I guess you might call me a bit of a talent scout, or maybe that's one of my abilities, because I remember thinking, well, this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, because I don't know anything about gardening. I mean,
well, that's why I sounded like I knew what I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, anybody would sound like they know.
This guy knows something.
Yeah. This guy has a garden. So yeah, it just seemed to make sense, and then you took it and ran, and eventually, it's like, there's no place for me. There's no place for me here.
I still miss you.
I appreciate that. I'm behind the scenes. I still publish episodes and things like that, but it's all good. I'm busy with some other things, and glad to see you're still going with it.
Yeah, back then we were doing I think the first season we did an episode a week.
Yes.
Yeah. And back then my job was to just show up and be interesting, and Dave's job was to do everything else, all the editing and all that. And I really miss that, because now I do all the editing. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, well, you're doing well. I mean, it's intense for those who may not fully understand what it takes to release even a relatively amateurish show. There's a fair amount of work behind the scenes, so kudos to you for taking on even more of that.
Well, I should say, I mean, and I started doing, for those that don't know, I started doing the YouTube videos just to get people to watch the podcast. Because at the end of the YouTube video, I say, hey, watch my podcast. And then it turns out that way more people watch the YouTube than watch the podcast.
Right.
But I've stuck with the podcast because I've got a group of, I think, pretty dedicated listeners. And I think they enjoy having the regular podcast, and I'm going to stick with it for another season. I should say that for next season, what I'm planning, it does take so I would say the work that goes into making one podcast is at least 4 times the work of a YouTube video.
Yeah.
One of my YouTube videos anyway, and a YouTube video of mine might get 10 times the views, sort of thing.
Right.
So a lot goes into it's just a different sort of dynamic. You're especially when it's actually when it's a guest. When I have a guest, all the work is getting the guest getting the guest.
Right.
Writing a long email. You got to write an email. You got to word in a way that they don't think you're crazy.
Yeah.
They don't know who you are, right? And that they're going to trust you, that you're not going to put some weird questions to them, or get all weird on them on some conspiracy theory or lizard people.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So you got to basically say, hey, I'm going to make a video of you and put it on the universe to see. And trust me, I'm not going to ruin your life while I do this.
Right. Yeah. Video adds a whole new element to it. I mean, part of the attraction, I think, when we first were talking about doing the show was, just acknowledging that we can be in our pajamas recording a podcast. But, I mean, not that we're all dressed up today or anything, but it takes, you have to be ready for the camera.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. No, you gotta can't just be
yeah.
here in your tidy whities with a cigarette hanging
Right.
out of your mouth.
That's how Greg did it in the early days.
Spaghetti stains all over your shirt,
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just,
Yeah.
it does change the dynamic. So I should
Mm,
give people a sense of where this is all going next year. And Dave has got
right.
some stuff. We're going to talk about gardening today. I haven't even talked about that. I mean,
Yes.
Dave and I just
Yeah.
get talking. We thought we'd just sort of have a fairly loose flowing episode today and crack
Yeah.
some jokes and have some fun. Yeah, for next season, for 2019, for those that listen all the time, everybody knows that I'm trying to write a book. I mean, I made a lot of headway of it in late 2017. And then I went from being a part-time professor at university to a full-time employee for the provincial government. And I haven't written a word on that book since.
Mm,
Every once in a while, I'll open the file up and I'll have to read the whole thing just to figure out what I said. And then I end up
right.
rewriting and rearranging and stuff. But I haven't gotten anywhere with it. And I have I've got a full-time job. I've got 2 young kids. I got a wife, and I got other interests besides, being a garden guy. So the book's just getting put aside, and I would
Mm,
really like to get that done. And so what I'm going to do with the podcast to give myself a bit more time, and there's only so much time. I put it another way. I spend 8 hours a day in front of a computer in a cubicle in an office, and then I spend about an hour and a half a day driving. And I'm an outdoors person, so there's a limit to how much time I want to be spent hunched over a computer screen. And
mm-hmm.
so something has to give. And so to keep all of this stuff going, the book just hasn't gotten anywhere, because from my body's point of view and from my well-being's point of view, it's just like work. I'm sitting typing on a
Mm-hmm.
computer, which is what I do. I want to be outside in my garden. I want to be out in the woods. I want to be fishing. I want to be doing stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what my body wants to do. That's what my soul
Yeah.
wants to do. So to free up some time, I'm going to continue producing podcast episodes next year, but I'm just going to do one a month. I hope people aren't. I'm going to continue to do the YouTube videos the same frequency I do right now. My rule for the YouTube videos is I do 1 a week, 2 if I feel like it, and more if I feel like it. And it usually works. Usually I go to my garden to make one video, and I get an idea, and I make another one, and then maybe I get an idea and make another one.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice I try to put something up on the weekend. I try to put something up in the middle of the week. And some weeks I've got even more. Like I just put one up this morning. It's Friday, November 22nd. It's record right now. So it's all over the place. It's not a job for me. This is just something I enjoy doing, and I enjoy sharing with people. And for anyone that's trying to learn how to garden, especially adapt or relearn gardening as a no-till permaculture gardener, there's an incredible amount of information out there. And a lot of times you do stuff that a guru says to do and it doesn't work, and it's a bit confusing. So yeah, I found the whole exercise for me adapting to this approach has been complete trial and error. And so I made this channel to just share the successes and share the errors and help anyone. The whole point of this, everything I'm doing here is for a version of me that existed 5 or 10 years ago. This is all the stuff I wish I'd known 5 or 10 years ago, right? So it's always changing, because there's some stuff I don't know now that 5 years from now I might figure out. Boy, I wish I knew that now, right? So it's an ongoing thing, and I don't pass myself off as an expert, because I'm wrong about stuff sometimes, right? So, and I don't have any credentials whatsoever as a gardening. I'm not a master gardener or anything like that. I do think that the garden I have is a credential. I think I'm one of those guys, if you dropped me off on an island and gave me a pack of seeds and said, don't die, I think I could probably do it. So,
I would like to be on your island as well.
Exactly, yes. Exactly. Yeah, to me, that's the, like whether you can grow like extra blue hydrangeas, to me, I don't want to offend anybody, but to me, who cares? It's like, can you grow food? Can you make food out of the ground using your brain and patience and just all that sort of stuff. I just love that process. So yeah, that's the plan for next year. The YouTube channel is going to continue as it is, and the podcast is going to have an episode a month. And I might change my mind on that. I mean, it's it's all up to me, I guess. But
Mm.
that's what as of right now, where I am this year. I've done a lot of thinking about it, and that's what I'm going to do. So there's still going to be podcasts, just not as many. And
Right.
for that year, and we'll see where that goes. But I really would like to get a book done. I think in this business, you got to have a book, or basically you're, and who knows, the book might be the worst book ever written and no one will read it. I have no clue. So
No. I remember telling you years ago, that would be a good angle would be for you to write a book. And Greg's problem is he's a bit of a perfectionist. It's not a problem, actually. That's actually a good problem to have. I don't have that so much. Sometimes I get in trouble, but no, he's. I'm sure it'll be fantastic.
Well, that was the great thing about starting to do the videos and the podcast, is that I don't claim to have any expertise on it. So I didn't mind if things were flawed. Like I get annoyed when I can't stand when there's a problem in my audio, or if I've got a bad wind background on my videos, or just the camera angle's poor. All that stuff annoys me. But I've never told anyone I'm a great filmer of things. so I don't. The perfectionism doesn't. It's an element, but it certainly doesn't run the show when it comes to making videos and podcasts. Because like I didn't even know anything about it. Nothing.
Yeah.
So
well, and you've done an amazing job with average equipment. I mean, and I think that's appealing nowadays to an audience. I really do. You don't have to have a $10,000 camera and a three-person crew to share what and it's obvious. You've got a pretty loyal following, and it's growing all the time. So I think that element of realism, or whatever it is what's working.
I think the first season of YouTube videos was shot with it's called a Sony Sony Bloggy. It's a tiny little camera. It's smaller than a smartphone, and it actually has, like, you can literally stick the camera right in your USB port. And it was just it was so easy to use, and like literally I'd record a video and stick it in my computer, and initially I'd email all that stuff off to Dave, and he would edit it, and then I started editing it. But I noticed that camera, and if you listen to some of my old videos, there's this sound. The microphone, because there's so much background noise outside, that the microphone increases its sensitivity, so it can hear me over the birds and the wind and all that sort of stuff. And because it's increasing its sensitivity, you can hear that the motor of the little teeny tiny motor inside the camera. That's what you're hearing in that video. And then I switched to this other camera. My wife's father passed away a number of years ago, and we sort of took a bunch of his stuff, right? And one of the things we got was this Panasonic camera that it sat in a drawer for, I think, 3 years. And then I said to Joy, do you mind if I use that thing for making videos? Because this Bloggy's got this sound I can't stand. So I used that thing for, I think, almost all of 2017 and some of 2018. That was a great camera, but something happened to it, and it would get mist inside of it. Fog, and so there'd be like a fog in front of the screen. It was compromised. It's so foggy and wet here, sort of thing. So it was compromised in that way. So then I bought like a $200, which for someone who's in, like Dave has nice stuff. He's not a cheap stuff like me.
I have no money, but I have nice stuff.
So I bought this $200 Sony camera, and that had that stupid sound, and you couldn't plug a mic into it. So the camera I've got now, and because I've got sponsors and stuff like that, I actually spend a bit of money on it. But even the camera I've got now, and we're getting, it's not gardening or anything like that, but it was like I think it was $300 and something. Here it is, right here. It's just for those that are interested. It's a Canon, and I get no money from Canon. Canon Vivixia something HFR 800, and you can put a microphone into this one, right?
Nice.
And and you can turn this around so you can see. It's very important for those that you got to be able to see yourself when you're filming yourself, to know that your face is in the frame. and to know
Mm-hmm.
that you haven't got snot running down your nose or some other
Yeah.
thing. You know,
Yeah.
you got to
Yeah.
know like what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Right? I think
Yeah.
there was a video once where I did the whole video and I had a toque on and it had like a bunch of fluff hanging off the toque.
Oh, I remember that.
Like, oh, and it was good stuff. It was good. I thought it
Oh
was good.
yeah.
So I had to just leave it and look like some, bum. Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So we did the first video in Dave's van, and the rest is history. And speaking of podcasts and what you've got going on, so Dave has his own podcast called Maritime Outdoorsman. Is that correct?
Yeah, you got it.
And you've got
You've got it.
how many episodes do you have right now?
You know what? I started it back in 2013, kind of as just a way to further market those online communities, message board sites. And once I stepped away from those websites, I was like, well, I still want to do the podcasting. There's just something I like about it, but my regular work, which is video production, not recording video, but producing sort of infomercial type video productions for companies and products, always gets in the way. That thing that actually makes money.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I just produce an episode whenever it works out. But I'm determined. I'm in one of those up phases right now where I really want to produce more episodes, and I've recorded a few recently, and they'll be getting published. Since I think there's 25-ish episodes that I have now, but I'm hoping to do at least one a month. I'm hoping.
What's the website address?
Just maritimeoutdoorsman.com, and it's not just for men. That's just a general term. I realized after I set that up that probably I could get some flack for that, but we have a lot of lady listeners too, so just maritimeoutdoorsman.com, and I'm hoping to have you on,
yes,
to talk about various things. I mean, you love to fish, you love the outdoors, and camping and that survival type stuff, and I think there's a lot of good things we can talk about together. So hopefully we'll do that maybe over the winter.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I mean, I've done some YouTube videos on that topic, but last winter I made a commitment to. I just noticed when I do, I love doing those videos. Like I'll be out in the woods and talking. Oh, look at this knife and look at this fire.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. But that's not what my channel is about. I mean, people, my audience wants me to talk about gardening.
Yeah.
That's why they're watching. They're not watching because they think I'm the most amazing man that ever lived. They're watching because they like what I have to offer in terms of gardening.
Right.
So I made that realization, and I basically told the audience, I think in one of these podcasts, it's got to be directly linked to gardening, otherwise it's not going to be on the channel. And maybe I'll do a separate channel on that sort of. It's not like there isn't lots of channels of guys out in the woods talking about this axe and that knife and so
all
on.
kinds.
I find a lot of them really annoying, and I'd love the same thing. I started a gardening show. I was like, why can't these guys just talk about what you need to talk about? Why can't they be a little more pragmatic and down to earth?
Right.
You don't need a $300 knife to be safe. And, you have to have to go in the woods, you should have a source of fire, a compass, and a knife is probably basic things to bring with you. But you don't need a $300 friggin' knife. I mean, they're talking about that knife because the knife company that makes those gave them one and probably gave them some money too, right?
Yes.
It's just ridiculous,
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd love to do that, but I got too much stuff on the go right now, and maybe maybe when I retire and I'm older and weaker and less energetic, I'll take that on. I don't know. But in the meantime, maybe I can be on.
You'll be a featured guest.
And I think the plan is to give a. It's a good if you go on the maritimeoutdoorsman.com website. It looks very much has a very similar look and feel to my podcast website because it was created by.
It uses exactly the same code. Yes,
exactly. Yes. So if you go on there, he's got some great interviews with various personalities in the just fishing. Do you have any hunting guys on there too?
You know, I do. I have a couple that are related to hunting. I just was never brought up hunting.
You don't hunt, yeah.
I don't hunt. And as far as angling goes, we are different, you and I. I'm more of a catch and release angler and whatnot, but it doesn't matter. But yes, I might steer it more towards the angling theme in the end. But
yeah.
for now, I have a unique situation where I know a lot of people in the outdoor space, and I just every once in a while I'm like, man, I've really got to start using those connections and getting their stories, because who doesn't like hearing stories?
Well, especially like a fishing story. That's the plan. Just to have a little teaser. The plan is for me to come on and tell this amazing fishing story from my childhood. Probably the most amazing hour of my life. I mean, I've had a couple amazing 2 or 3 minute periods, but that's a whole nother topic. Not appropriate for the show. But the most amazing hour of my life was a fishing trip I was on as a boy on the high seas.
That's awesome. I can't wait to. Yeah, don't say anything more about it because we need it. We need it real. So that'll be good. It'd be good to have you on there, and yeah. So.
And you're going to be pumping out some episodes, so I'm going to be downloading those and listening to them on my car on my boring commute to work.
Awesome.
That's the great thing about podcasts. That's all I listen to. I can't stand listening. I listen to the radio for a minute.
You turn it on, and then there's a commercial. Right?
Yeah, or it goes to some fluff rubbish that I don't care about. Someone's got a new hairdo. It's like, guess what this celebrity had for breakfast or what?
Yeah.
Jeez, come on, man. Let's have a good conversation here. So yeah, that'll definitely be worked into my my commute podcast rotation.
Awesome.
Awesome. It's great to listen to two people who know a lot about something talk to each other. That's like
it is.
Can I reveal the guest you're going to have on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you're going to have a guy on there named Perry Monroe. And when I was on the your message board, he used to post all the time. I could pick him out of a police lineup. I know exactly what he looks like. He fascinating posts. Just in a sort of, how old is he? He's going to be
he is,
70 or something.
And he probably wouldn't mind. He's a little older than 70. He's the same age as my father, and I've known him for 30 years. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but yeah, he's a super fascinating outdoorsman. Just made his living writing as an outdoor author, photography, carving, wood carvings, and guiding, both fishing and hunting. And anytime I get a chance, like I love just sitting and listening to his stories, and I was just like, I've got to record some of those and get them in. I don't know, how I'm going to lay them out yet, but anyway, if you're interested in the outdoors, this is the guy to listen to.
Oh yeah, no, he kind of looks like the outdoors version of Gandalf.
Mountain man.
Yes,
mountain man. Just incredible and so knowledgeable. Like you in the gardening.
Just you spend a lot of time focused on it, and you're always rethinking it and so on. I also think, especially hunting and fishing, it lends itself to stories. I grew up in my father's side of the family. They all hunt, they all fish. And when people would get together for Christmas or Thanksgiving, that's like the whole table would just be guys telling stories about this fishing trip or that fishing trip. And they'd be so unbelievably animated, there was up here and went down like that.
Yeah.
All that sort of body language, and you'd be like, you're a kid just watching all these guys talk. Wow,
Yeah.
So they make it sound even more, some of those things aren't quite as exciting as they sound.
Right.
But they make it sound really exciting. And they were talking about the most exciting moment of it, right? So of course, those moments are exciting. There's a lot of drudgery and waiting. I mean, the biggest striped bass I ever caught was this one.
That's a good one.
That's a 39.
Look at that guy. Look at that kid holding it. Yeah. That's a
So
nice one.
the youthful vibe, the vitality and youth, and the dark hair. Oh God. And the hairline.
Oh,
Oh.
don't talk to me about hairlines. I'm gonna go like this.
Time is
But
a cruel mistress, my friend.
it is.
But
But that'll be good.
that fish, like I spent 5 hours fishing, and the landing of that fish was 20 minutes of that. That was a great 20 minutes, but the rest of it was boring as hell.
Yeah. Well, I like the waiting and the anticipation, but
well, to a point, yeah.
I remember, maybe we're turning this into the Outdoorsman podcast, but I remember fishing 17 hours straight with my father for striped bass.
Wow.
Without a bite. Well, I mean, we took a break to have a bite and maybe a short nap in the truck, but yeah, basically 2 days straight. But anyway, yeah, if you like the outdoors, check out the Maritime
That's the place
Outdoorsman,
to go.
and Greg will be on there for sure in some upcoming episodes.
That's the place I'm going to go to scratch that itch. Whenever Dave will have me, I'm going to go because I clearly got the itch to talk about.
Yeah,
that.
you do.
I love that stuff.
I can feel it.
So that's what Dave's got going on. That's what's going on with me next year. With me, there's going to be a podcast, just not quite as much. Hopefully, there's going to be a book. I can't. 95% confident there will be a book that available for I don't know anything about it, but I've had author Robert Pavlis on a number of times, and he's given me some pointers on how to get this all sort of how to take a document you've created and get it to be a book.
Nice.
I know nothing about this stuff, so it's handy to know someone like that. So hopefully there'll be that, and of course the YouTube videos will be around, and Dave will have the Maritime Outdoorsman podcast, and with some great guests and some good content. So I was going to slip in some gardening content with this one. We do have a bit of time left, so I might as well try to get that in there. I thought I would talk a little bit about, and Dave, you just chime in wherever, if you've got a question. I mean, Dave is
I'll have questions.
Dave is not an avid gardener.
Nope.
Or a gardener.
At all.
Exactly. But when we recorded this thing, sometimes he would ask really good questions, because there's a lot of, when you're doing this stuff all the time, you don't always think what the uninitiated might think. So anything you think that someone might want to ask or whatever, you throw at me, and by all means. But I thought I would do a little bit of, I'm just going to say what's still growing in the garden right now. For those that don't have a large garden or aren't as into it as I am, or just aren't fully aware of what you can get out of a garden moving into late November. I'll tell you what's still going on in the garden right now. And then I'm going to talk a little bit, and it's all going to be very brief, but what to do in the fall this time of year. What kind of activity is going on in my garden? There's still, people don't think of this as a gardening time of year. People seem to put all their energy into April and May or June, and really, there's a lot of the stuff you might do that time of year you should be doing now. And this is the best time of year to do it, because there's no mosquitoes, there's no flies. The weather's, generally speaking, it's sort of nice weather. It's not too hot, so you don't work up a sweat, and so on and so forth. So what's still growing in the garden right now in terms of greens, and there's other things that could be growing if I planted them, of course, but the cole crops, kale, for me that's kale, and collards and kohlrabi. They're still growing and they're doing fine, except for the kohlrabi. The kohlrabi greens are great, and the freezing and the thawing and the frost, all that improves flavor. So all those things are just better and better. But the kohlrabi root, it's got this large turnip-like root that sits on top of the soil. I picked one last weekend to use in our supper, and it had actually frozen. You can tell when you cut into the root, the flesh should be kind of like a greeny white, I guess, like a very white, but with a hint of green. And it shouldn't be translucent. If the flesh is translucent, it's because it's frozen. It is frozen and thawed, or it's frozen. Basically, it's been frozen, and that vegetable cannot handle being, for the leaves, the foliage can handle being frozen and thawed, as long as it's roots, as long as the soil isn't frozen, as long as when it does thaw, the roots can draw up moisture from the ground. But once that root freezes, that plant is, you can't even store it indoors. You've got to use it in some way. You got to make soup or whatever. So that's done, even though they're around. They're still out there. They're just got to be used, and really, once they freeze like that, they're only really good for soup.
I was going to say, are they good for anything once they're frozen?
The texture sort of, I mean, the way I like to, I'm actually considering not growing them next year. No one in my family likes them. And they're
kohlrabi
big.
soup.
You get like a kohlrabi bulb. It's big. It's like the size of a softball or bigger, right? I got some
like
really
a big onion.
ones. Yeah, like a huge onion, right? So they have nice greens, and the greens are good. But the main thing you're growing is that root, and like basically, I have to blackmail my children to get them to eat it, or have to have some sort of quid pro quo type thing. Nobody likes it, so it's just like
fried and bacon.
Why am I growing this stuff that nobody likes? Like why don't I? That's another. If you've got a family, don't grow stuff nobody likes. I mean, if you like it, grow a little bit for you. But I've tried for years to get my family to eat this stuff, and this is like a Cold War survival food. Like it's a great thing to grow, and that grows really well in our climate, right? But nobody likes it.
So is it the flavor? Is it the flavor that?
Yeah, it tastes like.
What's it taste like?
Like turnip, but not even as good. Not as good as turnip. Like turnip, but not as good. And who likes turnips, right? So
yeah,
turnips are all right, but I mean
they're okay. But you're not going to be like, I think I'm going to have a turnip today.
Yeah, like you don't go to a high-end restaurant and they're like, this week the special is turnip, mashed turnip.
Oh, mashed, yeah.
I mean, mashed turnip's good if you put a lot of brown sugar and butter into it.
Yeah, candied turnip and roots are good with brown sugar.
Oh yeah, like last weekend I tried to mash up the kohlrabi with brown sugar and all that sort of stuff, and I still had to blackmail my son into watching it. It took him 3 days. We have that rule, like if you don't eat it, that's gonna be your supper tomorrow. You got to finish what you didn't eat to eat tomorrow's supper, right? And then of course you make sure that the very next day you make the most their favorite friggin' thing for supper.
Oh right.
Favorite dessert. Tomorrow we're having hot dogs, pizza, and
ice cream sundaes.
Exactly, and ice cream with cookies in it.
Yeah.
So and the kid's just like crying, and he's like, this stuff tastes terrible. I'd rather die than eat this, right? So I took my son two meals. So like the next day he didn't finish.
He wouldn't eat it.
There was like a little bit left. So the next day he wouldn't eat it. He just wouldn't eat it at all. I think something had happened at the school, like they had some food there, so he wasn't super hungry. So he skipped supper to get away from that kohlrabi. Right? A boy, like an 11-year-old boy went with. I couldn't do. I was a huge kid, right? But anyway, the next night he because we had something.
He choked it down.
My wife picked like one of his. We had spaghetti, I think.
Yeah.
This is one of his favorite things. So my wife, like she, I think
did it up.
Wife seems to understand how to manipulate children better than me.
Better, yeah.
Yeah. I just saw like, don't do that because I'm your father.
Because I said so.
Yeah, your wife's more subtle and better with the mind game.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know how I get on the topic. Kohlrabi, I don't think I'm going to do it next year. And if you like it, great. Dave, do you like kohlrabi?
I would try it. I'm actually kind of hungry right now. Hungry enough to try kohlrabi.
Yeah, well, you'd have to be.
Yeah. But the green leaves, you put it in a salad, or
you cook them like collard greens or like kale.
Oh, it's like okay, yeah. I like that stuff.
The green leaves of kohlrabi, they have the texture and flavor of collard greens, but they cook quickly like kale. Like a collard green, you have to cook like half an hour. So you cook it a long time. Otherwise, it's just not soft, and also it's sort of farty. It takes a while. Like your body digests it all the way down. It never stops digesting it. It's a full digestive trip. And
You
so
want to cook it well.
yeah, you want to have a good long. So the great thing about the kohlrabi is that the greens have the flavor of the collard green more so than like a kale doesn't taste like collards. It's similar but not the same. The kohlrabi greens taste like collard greens, but they cook fast, 2 minutes, just like kale, cook really fast. So if they could develop a variety of kohlrabi that gets a pathetic root and massive leaves, I would be all in. And if anyone watching this knows of something like that, that's great. I find the ones I grow, they tend to get like huge root and these like sort of kind of not very impressive leaves. So anyway,
if there's any geneticists watching or listening, you can work on that.
Hey, make that happen. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I've got growing. I do have Swiss chard in the garden, but it's getting too cold for Swiss chard. A lot of people talk about Swiss chard being this invincible plant, but it can only take so much cold, and it can't take as much cold as kale. There's a point in the fall, in late fall, where the Swiss chard, it changes color and it becomes this dark green, and it doesn't, the tough greens, they freeze and they thaw. They freeze at night and they thaw in the day. Swiss chard, it freezes and then it thaws, but it's not alive when it thaws. It thaws dead. It looks like it's been cooked. It just lays down. It looks like it's been cooked. It's just like, like it's dead. Yeah. So the plant might still be alive. The plant is still alive. A lot of Swiss chard, the plant and its roots and all that will survive the entire winter and come back in the fall. But the foliage, the leaves, the part you eat is done, and it's not making any new stuff either. It's just gone into hibernation. It's just given up for the year.
Right.
So I've got that. I've got some lettuce that I planted for a fall crop that has been sort of wrecked by the cold nights. It couldn't take it. And some lettuce is better handling cold than others. This one is not so great. It's kind of a romaine type lettuce, Paris Cos, I believe, and also all my root vegetables, carrots, parsnips, and salsify. I still have some of those still in the ground. Although I've put plastic domes over where they're planted to keep the soil from freezing, so I can actually get them out of the ground. So I'm playing around a little bit this year of not necessarily bringing all that stuff. I've brought a lot of stuff in and stored it in the garage, but I've left some things out, mainly because I've just been too busy, or whatever. So I thought, can I buy myself more time? A lot of people that garden, they get overwhelmed with having to. Let's say it's your first year where you've got a large garden and you grow all this stuff. And then in the fall, you get overwhelmed with what am I going to do with all this stuff? And you just leave it there and it all rots. And then you say, oh, well, I'm not going to do that again, right? So one solution is to find ways to be able to leave it out there and then just chip away at it. And that's the way I like to do a lot of things, just a little bit here, a little bit there. So like I've harvested probably half my carrots and probably 2/3 of my parsnips, but there's some still out there. It's a Friday now and I get the day off, so I'll probably go out and chip away at it today. But I hate feeling like I have to do something. Like I love feeling like, oh, I'll just do it until I don't feel like doing it anymore. And if I want to do something else, I want to do that too. I don't like having, my wife will always say, what are you going to do on your day off? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to decide at the last minute. Whatever I want to do when I feel like it. Whatever I want to do when I feel like it is. I took
sound like a 5-year-old.
That's. I think you need that. I think that's healthy.
It's true. Well, yeah, you got to be spontaneous.
I've got where I work. One of the things you have in our contract is that you can take. There's a limit to how much of this you can do, but you can take time off without pay if you want. Hardly anyone does it because everybody needs money.
that's like all the time I take off.
Exactly. Yeah. All of your time off is without pay.
All of my time.
You're a professional consultant.
Yes.
So yeah, last May I did that to do a bunch of work in my garden and do some fishing and but mainly just to be able to. Though I told my wife is I want to spend 2 weeks doing what I want when I feel like it. If I want to take a nap at 1 in the afternoon, I want to do that, Yeah. So it was great, and I mean, you don't get paid for that time, but they sort of garnish it off. You don't it's not like you don't get paid for a month. They basically just take that off of your pay in increments over time. So it's like it would be like you just picked up an expensive habit for about 10 weeks.
Yeah,
that's the effect. For about 10 weeks, you're spending like, $150 more than you normally would, or something. There's some period of time where your
Right.
paycheck's a bit smaller, so it's like you
Right.
picked up a bad coke habit or something for a little while. Get addicted to roulette or something, and you recover from it, right? Which many people do all the time,
Yes,
So.
it might be a lot of people that you work with that do that on their time off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's cheaper than a trip to Disney with your family. It's way
Sure.
cheaper than that. And I had a great.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a whole bunch of work. That was when I put all the sand in my garden, and I went on a 1 week survival trip in the forest behind my house. I got dropped off by a buddy in a different part of that forest, and I went in with like I don't know, I think it was a 70-pound pack. And I came out after about 3 or 4 days because it rained. Because it rained the whole time. It was just I had a great setup. I had this sort of like camp set up, like a lean-to type thing. And
this is going to be perfect for an episode of the Maritime Outdoorsman.
Yes, I won't blow it, but I was exploring.
Yeah.
It was all kinds of. I had a camp set up that was about a 1 hour hike to about 6 different lakes. Right.
Oh yeah.
Because it's so lakey. There's a lot of lakes around here, right?
Yeah.
So I just thought I'm going to go to a different lake every day and try to catch my supper, sort of thing. And I brought just enough food to not, normally when I go on these things, I bring less food than you need. So I might have, my daily diet might be 1,000 calories less than normal. But if I catch fish, then it's okay. So I usually lose some weight while I'm doing it. Anyway, the first day was nice, and the second day was nice, and the second day was nice, and then it rained that night. And when I woke up in the morning, it rained all day. And then the next day, I woke up and I had a bad night. I can't remember what happened. Something bad happened. And the next day it was raining. It was just miserable. And I turned on, I had a little radio with me, like a shortwave radio. I turned that on, and it was going to rain every day, a lot. Right? And I was just like, I'm just going to be hunkered down. I mean, yeah, I could sure I could make it, right?
Yeah.
But I've been on fishing trips where it's raining a lot and you don't mind at all because it's warm and you've got like different. You're not alone. I mean, you got a buddy to play cards with, something like that.
Yes.
There's some camaraderie there, and you can sort of share the tasks and stuff like that. But this one in particular, because of where this place is, it was just like bleak and cold and windy, and on top of it all, I hadn't picked a good site, so there was days where the wind wouldn't blow into. I had like a kind of like a lean-to, had a fire in front of it. There was days when the smoke was blowing away from it. And there's a way to set it up. You're supposed to set your camp up juxtaposition to the prevailing wind a certain way, which I did. But there were certain days where it would the wind would not go the way it's supposed to go, and it would blow it right into where you're sleeping and you're
smoking yourself out.
The whole point was I took a week off to have fun, and I was not having fun at all. And I'm too old to care what anybody thinks about my machismo or my masculinity or whatever. I called my buddy, like, buddy, I am done. This is not any fun. I can be home tonight having watching TV, and I'm just not having any fun. I mean, I came here to do a bunch of fishing, and I'm just hunkered down in the rain, breathing smoke, just existing. This is not fun. I came here to explore.
Yeah.
I'm not really exploring. I'm just sort of surviving. And I'm not going to win $1 million from doing this, so. Anyway, total diatribe. Back to gardening. Carrots, parsnips, I got those things going on. What to do in your garden this time of year is weeding and mulching, right? You could. So I did a video very recently where I put a whole bunch of. I took a garden that had some weeds in it. I pulled the weeds and I put mulch down, and I showed how it only takes a few minutes to do that, and it's really quick and it's an easy way to do it. And someone said, "Why are you pulling the weeds? Why don't you just put paper on top of the weeds?" And you can do that, but this time of year, depending on the kind of weed, if it's a perennial, like if you cover a weed, cover and smother, use that approach to kill weeds. It works if the weed is trying to grow and you're depriving it of light. So it just can't live without that. It needs light to live. So there's heat and it's trying to grow and it can't get light, so it starves to death and it dies. But if the ground is so cold that plant has just gone dormant, it's not trying to grow, then all you've really done is mulched it, and it'll probably it'll probably just come back next year. So for the plants that are annuals, you just cover it and it'll be fine. But any sort of weed you've got in your garden, a lot of weeds out there, I don't know what everything is. If it's a perennial, it's just going to be there next year with that massive root system it developed during the garden season. So let's pull it. So weed and mulch. Hoard mulch, right? This time of year, people are, I really dropped the ball yesterday. I came home from work and there was bags of mulch everywhere. And I just wanted to get home. I was just done. But I wish I could have filled the car too, because I didn't have to pick up my kids. When I pick up mulch in my car, I put them in the trunk, I put them in the back seat, I put them in the front seat. So I have to really choose it. It's basically, you want to pick up mulch in a day when it's not raining, because if it's raining, the bags are dirty. They're covered in
wet
dirt and mud and stuff like that. So it was a perfect day. It was nice and reasonably nice, and the bags looked dry and they looked clean. And I drove by a whole bunch of them. Because really, this is the easiest time of year to collect mulch, because people are just taking it to the end. I mean, it's right there for you to take, and even the bags are useful in a garden. And so you should get as much as you can. Some people will rake. Some people don't do all their raking in the fall, and they do it in the spring. So sometimes in April and May, there's some more bags that you can get like that. But the bulk of them are this time of year. So it's the smartest thing you could possibly do is grab as much of that as possible, put it on all your beds, and then anything you've got extra, put that aside too, because you're going to use it, right? So hoard any source of mulch you can find. Claiming new spaces in your garden. If you look at your garden and you think, you know what, I think I could put a bed there. Or, I think I want to make my garden a bit bigger. I want to expand it, right? This is the great time of year to do that. I mean, you can build that frame, you can get it all set up, you can do whatever you're going to do to the soil, you can mulch it, and that the garden will have like an entire winter and early spring to just become a garden, I guess, to put it that way. The living things that are in that soil system have all that time to sort of adapt to this new configuration that you've given it, right? And then it's just one more thing you don't have to do in the spring, especially if you don't get to do it till where I live, especially like May. Doing anything in the garden in May is hellish, because you've got these black flies that are just breathing them in. I don't know how many videos, I always edit it out, but how many videos I've had to edit out apart because I breathe in a fly, cough it out, and swear my face off. I just do it all the time, right? It drives me crazy, and people laugh and they give me all kinds of suggestions for how to, put a cigarette in a pop bottle or something. It's like, I have a billion black flies. That's not going to do nothing. Come on, man. Just because you read something on a blog, it doesn't mean it works. Like, when you're like on the edge of a wilderness where there's bogs and black flies, there's no solution.
Yeah, you're out there.
Yeah, I mean, you can cover yourself in some sort of mesh thing. That's no good for video anyway.
No.
Also, I just hate being covered in that. I can't stand. I go fishing, I don't do any of that.
No.
I put like was it Ben's 100? I've got some old stuff that I got. Back when eBay was amazing. Back when you could buy anything on eBay. It was great. So I got all this like unbelievably toxic bug. That works.
Well, you're growing a third leg, but other than that, it's pretty good.
Well, I'll need that for when my knees give out on me. So, that stuff works great. It works better than just about anything. So claiming new spaces and just reorganizing. I mean, I've taken I don't know if I'll have the time this fall, but I actually have a plan to reorganize not my entire garden, but the whole part of the garden, for those that watch. The part of the garden that is outside of the garden enclosure. There's a fenced part and there's a part that's outside the fence. I have a plan to bring that all to basically open the fence up, enclose the whole thing for a number of reasons. So that's going to be some good episodes, but I don't know if I've got enough time this winter to do that. And I think if I do that, I can actually add about 5 more 4x8 beds to the garden.
Nice.
And then that'll be as big as, the garden's basically as big as I can handle on my own. It's the same size as the Ruth Stout garden. It's if you look at most of these sort of people, gurus that write books and grow a lot of food in their backyard, and they're growing their own food. They're not like have a market garden or whatever. They're just, trying to grow as much of their own food as possible. About 2,500 square feet seems to be like the size. Sure, you could go larger, I suppose, but that's it's about the limit of what I can manage. The kids are getting to be helpful. Like I gave them a great task the other day. I picked all my grapes, and in the clusters, and I put a big bowl of grape clusters on the table. And I said, "Okay, your job is to take all of these grapes off the clusters and remove the stem, and to pick out all the ones that look gross or funny in any way." And
nice.
They just sat there for, I don't know, half an hour and just talked to each other. And for I don't know why, but they didn't complain. And they did it. And I didn't have to do it. I hate doing that stuff, right? Like, hulling strawberries. I like making the jam, but the hulling. They did all that stuff. It was just, that stuff. The more you can get, like your kids, I've got them to help me pick all the leaves off the herbs sometimes so we can dry them. That's a tedious job, right? And they've got those tiny little hands.
Yeah. That's right. Better for that stuff. Child
labor is
it's a great thing.
Oh, you see why people had large families in the old days.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't get, you know what children don't have? Arthritis. So
well, they will when they're older because of the child labor.
I'll be long gone by then. I'll blame it on some other thing. Oh, that was from those damn smartphones.
That was from the iPads.
Those damn video games. All them video games you played. Won't blame Dad. Reorganizing. Also, another great thing to do this time of year, is to document your success and your failure. What you did that year. Every year you have a couple ideas. Things go wrong. You have some ideas of why it went wrong and how to solve that. Also, just write it, like I just said, I'm not going to plant kohlrabi next year. So I have a place where I keep all this stuff, and I've done episodes on this. But one of the things in bold is going to be, don't plant kohlrabi. Nobody likes it. Tell myself not to do that because it's just a waste of time. I could have grown something everybody likes, and I should have grown more beets. I think I'll even write that down because my wife and I like beets, and the kids will eat them. Nice. So they'll, if we put
they'll choke it down.
We put one cut up beet on their plate with the Sunday dinner sort of thing. They'll eat it. And they won't leave it till last. They'll work it into the system sort of thing. Because beets are sweet, right? So if you cook them good, roast them sort of thing, they taste really good.
Right.
So more beets, no kohlrabi. But other things, just, things that maybe you had a problem with a pest, or maybe something didn't grow very well, or there's a certain space in your garden where you tried to grow something and now you realize it's just not a good space because there's not enough light or whatever. Like there's a place I tried to grow. The other thing, I grew all these cucumbers. I grew pickling cucumbers and I grew salad cucumbers. And just for whatever reason, we like salad cucumbers with tomatoes, like cucumber, tomato, basil, that sort of thing. And when I had cucumbers, I didn't have any tomatoes. The tomatoes weren't ready until the cucumbers were done.
Right.
And my tomatoes are never ready until September. So it's just not a good way to do it. So I'm going to write, don't grow salad cucumbers. You can use the pickling cucumbers as salad cucumbers anyway. So that sort of stuff, your successes and failures and just ideas you have for how to be, and that's how you become, people always say you've got a green thumb and all that sort of rubbish. It's more about just constantly staying with the problem and trying to build on your successes and come up with, try to figure out where things went wrong and come up with just try something different every year. Or if maybe it's just a different space, trying to just constantly coming up with ideas and reasoning and trying to understand what's going on and having a plan for next year. You'll become a better gardener. You just will.
Oh yeah.
Even if you just write down what went wrong, you can go read about it and that sort of stuff. So there's that, and of course, anything that's still in your garden to be used, blanch, freeze, preserve, all that sort of stuff. Use your stuff up. So that's what's going on in the garden right now. That's the sort of stuff I'm doing this time of year. So yeah, if you're unaware of what can be happening in a garden in November, a lot of activity, a lot of things you can be doing. Even December, it's really, January is not a lot. January and February, you know, sometimes late February, if the weather's right and my domes have thawed something on, I might sow some spinach or something like that. But really, November is a time of activity in the garden. There's lots to do. So, Dave, it's great great having you back, man. Always.
Well,
fun.
Hopefully it didn't side rail the episode too much having me here. But
no.
No, it's good. It's always good to catch up. We've always hit it off well.
Yeah.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I look forward to the sort of renewed effort into the Maritime Outdoorsman podcast. Everyone, if you're listening to this and you want to help support the show, I've got sponsors, Best Seeds and Safest Gardening Products. If you look at the description box, or if you're on the podcast website, the show notes, there's details there for coupon codes. If you want to help support my show and there's something they sell that you need, go to their website, buy that thing, and that'll help to convince them that I'm a good partner for them. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Dave, great having you on the show. And everyone out there, until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Thanks, man. See ya.